Meeting to order. It's 9:01 and today is Thursday, September 19th, 2019. This is day 2 of a 2-day meeting for the Physical Therapy Board of California, and we are meeting at Carrington College, 395 Civic Drive, Suite C, Pleasant Hill, California, room 403. Can we please have roll call?
Alicia Ben-Ahmed.
Here.
Jesus Dominguez.
Present.
Daniel Drummer.
Present.
Katerina Alabi.
Present.
Tanya McMillian.
Present.
All members are present and the board has a quorum.
Thank you. And can I please have Dr. Dominguez read our PTBC mission statement?
With pleasure, Madam President. To advance and protect the interests of the people of California by the effective administration of the Physical Therapy Practice Act.
Thank you. And it looks like we do have agenda item number 10 from yesterday to continue to today, which is discussion and possible board action for the increase in the exempt level of the executive officer. And so we all had a little homework to go home and take a look at the cover letter and think about any edits that we wanted to make to the letter. I did take some notes. Wanted to ask any of the members if they had any ideas. And if anyone wanted to start, otherwise I can throw some ideas out there.
Would you like to just go line by line?
Yes.
Okay, we'll update the date.
Yes. So we'll update the date to when we send it. Dear Miss Nicole Lee, my recommendation is to just move the wording around just a little bit to read the Physical Therapy Board of California, and in parentheses, the board instead of PTBC, because I don't think we use PTBC anywhere else in the letter, but we do use the board throughout the letter. So maybe we'll say the board. Respectfully requests that the Department of Consumer Affairs, DCA, forward the PTBC's recommended exempt level change for the board's executive officer position to the California Department of Human Services, CalHR. At the September 2019 board meeting, the members once again voted unanimously, assuming that we will, in support of this action. So same type of content, just reworded a little bit.
I like the changes that you made. PTBC is mentioned in the second to last paragraph, but we could change that to the board.
Second to the last. Gotcha. Okay. Any other comments from the members on paragraph 1? And we invite public participation. If you have any suggestions, please come forward.
I just wanted to confirm in the last sentence, you're saying at the August 2017 board meeting, and you want to include this date as well?
Yes, September
Okay.
2019.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. So what I did not include that was in the original letter is that at the sentence you're talking about, the previous time that we had made the request, the board voted unanimously. However, the board has been unsuccessful. I did not add that, but if you would like to add that for reference, we can.
If we do, are we going to keep voted italicized?
Yeah, I think unanimously is supposed to be italicized instead of voted, to emphasize that.
Yeah. If I heard you, you answered a once again.
I did. It's a new sentence, actually. At the September 2019 board meeting, the members once again voted unanimously in support of this action.
I think the once again kind of makes the however statement almost redundant.
Okay. I think so too.
I think it's also a little bit more subtle,
Okay.
friendly.
Okay, moving on. I did not make any changes to paragraph 2. I don't know if anyone has any suggestions for paragraph 2.
So the way it reads is, was partially approved. I just thought maybe we need to be clear, was approved for a lower level than requested. I don't know if that.
And then the sentence that starts with the members of the board, I'll just read the whole thing. The members of the board had requested the EO exempt level change from level O to L and was approved with a level change to level N. So I would like to scratch that last level in that sentence, since it's a little redundant.
Yeah.
Next sentence begins, the level N is equivalent to the Staff Services Manager SSM 2/3 level. And I think instead of a comma, we can insert and may create a compactual misallocation issue for the second level in command, SSM 2 Assistant Executive Officer.
And I would agree, and my question would be, should we be replacing the word may create with would
Will.
create?
Yeah, let's put will.
Can you repeat that, please?
I will repeat the sentence. The level N is equivalent to the Staff Services Manager SSM 2/3 level and will create a compactual misallocation issue for the second level in command, SSM 2 Assistant Executive Officer.
Thank you.
I like addressing the compaction issue. I don't think that this creates the compaction issue. The compaction issue already exists. This change to an N does not sufficiently address the compaction issue that exists. Because I think showing that this has been a problem and it continues to be a problem even though this little tiny change was made.
So striking the may and saying creates?
No, does not sufficiently address. You want me to reread it from the top?
Further exacerbates?
It doesn't make it worse,
Or
which to me
heightens?
exacerbates means it makes it worse.
Heightens?
It doesn't resolve the issue, which is what we're
Perpetuates?
trying to do.
Perpetuates?
Perpetuates. Yeah.
Perpetuates?
I can read it both ways if you guys want to hear it. It's okay. The level N is equivalent to the Staff Services Manager SSM 2/3 level and perpetuates the compactual misallocation issue for the second level in command, SSM 2 Assistant Executive Officer. So that's option 1. Option 2, the level N is equivalent to the Staff Services Manager SSM 2/3 level and does not sufficiently address the compactual misallocation issue for the second level in command, SSM 2 Assistant Executive Officer.
Who likes option 1?
I like option 1.
I like option 1.
Perpetuates works for me as well.
Okay. Any public comment? Okay, any other comment on paragraph 2?
Can you read it one more time?
Sure. Want me to do the whole paragraph?
Yeah.
Yeah. The last exempt level change was requested in August of 2017 and was partially approved in February 2018. But instead of partially approved, we're going to say,
Was approved for a lower level than requested.
thank you. The members of the board had requested the EO exempt level change from level O to L and was approved with a level change to N. The level N is equivalent to the Staff Services Manager SSM 2/3 level and perpetuates the compactual misallocation issue for the second level in command, SSM 2 Assistant Executive Officer.
I thought we were removing with a level change to level N, or is that going to remain?
We're going to leave that part, we're just taking out the word level
Okay,
before and
Okay.
before the sentence ends.
okay, got it. Thank you.
We good?
Yes.
Next paragraph?
Yes. Paragraph 3,
So we're going to change that first sentence to over the past 5 years?
Is it only the past 5 years? Is it only the past 5 years, or is it, it's been longer?
It has been
Feels
longer.
longer.
And there's two parts to that sentence with both growth and change. So, growth has been a constant for, we haven't seen a year where there hasn't been growth since I've been with the board.
So there has been consistent growth there has been consistent growth throughout the life of the PTB. Over the past 5 years, there's been significant change.
I think yesterday we even discussed changing that language of change in the physical therapy profession to something stronger.
Yeah, I have maybe a suggestion.
Mike,
If I could read my,
Mike,
sorry, it's Jesus actually, but. Thank you, Dr. Drummer.
your middle name is Miguel, right?
Let's see if I can read in between my annotations here. Over the past 5 years, the board has experienced tremendous growth and has had to respond to the increasing complexity of the physical therapy profession.
Way better.
has had to respond to
To the increasing
increasing.
complexity of the physical therapy profession.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other suggestions for paragraph 3?
The next sentence is a little confusing for me. When we're saying that the board staffing levels have increased by 50% and by 143%, it doesn't say, like, how, I don't know, it just seems like those metrics are a little
Yeah, I didn't
blurry.
understand them.
Yeah.
Just 243.
Should we just go by 1% and maybe put like a range, like a year between these 2 years? Or these years, it's increased by this amount to be more clear?
In 2017, the 143% calculation came from the last change in allocation for the executive level position, which was in 99/2000. So in that 15 or 17-year period, it increased by 143%. I don't know that you specifically have to call out a percentage. Essentially, in plain English, the staff has more than doubled in the last 10 years and is continuing to grow.
So I actually would like to address that past 5 years that we just talked about in that first sentence and say, and then go back to, since the last major change in the exempt allocation in the 1990s, in the late 1990s, so that, and then.
Other than the adjustment from O to N that happened in
Right,
18.
but to try to capture, I mean, because the O to N was after much work, and it wasn't enough to address what we saw originally as the bigger issue, going all the way back to the late 90s. And so I actually want to try to capture that this little bump from O to N was, while we appreciate it, was not even close to what we should be getting. So to really continue to go back to that, to the 1990s, and nothing was done between then and 2017. So perhaps since the last significant allocate or exempt since the last major adjustment in exempt allocation in the late 90s, with exception of the small change in 2017, the board has experienced tremendous growth, blah, 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 and continue with that sentence that way.
I don't think we need to mention the 2017 part. I think just
Okay.
going from 1999 until present day sort of
Okay.
captures the growth.
Okay. I mean, because, yeah, that there hasn't been an adjustment in all of that time when so much has changed. I mean, that's, I think, where we need to try to capture.
And then that'll flow into
Yeah.
Mike's sentence
Right.
about the complexity of the profession. Not that, Mike, that Mike. So you have like the beginning of the sentence and you have the end of it. Would you guys like to blend them together so we can hear it out loud?
So since the last significant exempt level change in the late 1990s, the board has experienced tremendous growth as well as changing complexity of the, was that the word?
Increasing.
Increasing complexity of the physical therapy profession. And I think by using the word significant exempt level change, it shows that we don't think the change from O to N was significant at all. Insignificant it
Right.
was. Okay. So then, moving on to the second sentence, specifically the board staffing levels have increased by, so if we go back to the 90s and look at board staffing now, how much have we changed?
Jason, they said doubled.
If you're using the comparative of the last significant change in allocation, I'd have to do the math on that one, but it's much more than doubled. It's tripled and even quadrupled at that point, so.
Can we defer to staff to find out the exact metric and insert it
Oh, yeah,
at a later
absolutely.
time? Okay, thank you.
So then eliminating the over the past decade
Right.
part then as well, from that, end of that sentence, or the end of that clause.
Yeah, in 2000, it's in the package as well. In 2000, at that point, we were authorized with 8.8 positions,
We're
which
at
included the
30-something
executive
now.
officer, so.
Oh, yeah. So it looks like all of these different percentages need to be changed to reflect the 1999 start time,
Potentially, yeah.
potentially.
But we know that there's more than a 50%
Yeah.
growth in licensing population
sure.
since the late 90s.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll finish that off with the more recent stats. That makes sense.
Just another note, the use of the term 90s, that level O was done actually in August of 2000. So we could use that
Okay.
as the baseline instead.
Okay.
Could I suggest that that paragraph ends with the phrase "and growing"? So 50% increase in the total licensing population and growing. Could I suggest that rather than "and growing," something to the effect of that continues to grow at a, I don't know, rapid pace? Is rapid too inaccurate?
There's no-
Significant pace?
Or is it a steady pace?
It's steady. I mean, the
Steady.
15% is trend for the last 3 years, so.
So reflect that. A continued 15%, a continued steady 15% growth per year.
Yeah, that continues to grow at a rate of 15% annually.
Yeah.
Can you say that one more time?
Oh, boy. Let's see, and a 50% increase in, sorry, Brooke. Let's see. How about the last part after allocation, and an increase in the total licensing population that continues to grow by 15% annually.
Is there any public comment on this particular piece of the paragraph or staff comment?
And at any time, please come forward if anyone has anything to add.
Actually, this Expenditure for Administrative Services, trends show that the licensing population growth average between 3 and 5 years, it's like 3% at the highest, but consistently 2.5% every year.
Okay,
Just,
better.
thank you.
So, yeah, again, just if we can allow, with our adoption, we'll allow staff to make adjustments to
Yeah.
numbers as appropriate. Thank you.
Brooke, you're probably doing a better job capturing all of this than I am. Mine's kind of all over the place. But I've got all the ideas down.
So I believe in this next paragraph, we're changing PTBC to the board.
I think if we started the first sentence with "in comparison" instead of "in comparing," something like "in comparison with other DCA boards, the board size and structure, blah, blah, blah."
You would say the board size and structure supports the request for an exempt level change to level L.
L.
Now, we have started using quotes around the letters now in this paragraph, where in previous paragraphs they did not exist. So
Right.
we can have some consistency there. But I do like the way that sounds a little bit better. So the sentence will read, in comparison with other DCA boards. Well, now the
The
PTBC
boards.
makes more sense because we're talking about multiple boards.
Right, right.
We'll say the Physical Therapy Board,
The board's size and structure supports the request for an exempt level change to level L.
for the EO position effective October 1st, 2019.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I wrote some notes last night before even saying and comparing the size. I put, please refer to the overwhelming evidence attached to this letter that supports and justifies the proposed exempt level. And then I continued with the sentences that you're suggesting to amend. So in comparison, and then the board believes that the reality of our staff and budget sizes support the request for an exempt level change to the level O for the EO position effective such and such.
I
To
like-
level L? To level L?
Yeah.
I like that, that's more specific.
Yeah.
And I like that you pointed to the overwhelming evidence.
It's
Yeah.
strong,
Well,
but
no, part of that language that I really appreciate is referencing back to the package material, because we want to make sure that the package material travels with
With
the
the letter.
request to all
Yes.
levels of approval.
Absolutely. Can we add page numbers too to all of the attachments as
Yes.
well?
Dr. Dominguez?
Could I suggest, I like it, could I suggest that we add the term, so we have size, structure, and I would suggest we consider adding and administrative demands? So it's not just about the size and the structure, but, you know, the administrative burden has increased.
Yeah, and Alicia did refer to staff.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Madam President, if you could read back one more, once again.
I'll try. So please refer to the overwhelming evidence attached to this letter that supports and justifies the proposed exempt level. Would you like me to say level L? I just said proposed exempt level. In comparison, I don't know what your language was.
In comparison with
other
other
DCA
DCA boards.
With other DCA boards. The
This-
board believes that the reality of our staff budget and administrative duties support the request for an exempt level change to level L for the EO position effective October 1st, 2019. The current level compensation for I put the board's EO position is level N.
Do we need to repeat that last sentence because it's reiterated
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
paragraph
I
2?
agree.
So we might be able to just omit it? Okay.
Before we move to adopt this package, is it possible to have staff revise the letter so we can look at it one more time, like with all the input? Is that,
Yeah, I think during a recess or a break, we can make that
Okay.
happen.
or
Okay.
direct you to make non-substantive grammatical changes if, you find things that,
The dates, the math with percentages and those kind of things, we'll certainly take care of as long as the board is okay with that delegation.
okay.
Are we limiting ourselves in the comparison to other boards and not including bureaus or other entities? Or just comparing ourselves to other boards, is that sufficient?
And do we want to add anything about the EO salary evaluation in this letter, or where were we planning on including that?
I think inserting a statement that the board's request is congruent with the findings of the salary study is perfect. That's
It's probably a good way to end the letter.
to answer Dr. Drummer's question about whether we're limiting, a fair comparison really would be boards to boards because of, especially if we're adding that administrative portion of the language where what we do is a little bit different than, say, a bureau without board members, having to confer with multiple people, just a bureau chief under the direction of the director of the Department of Consumer Affairs. It's a little bit different of a comparison. It's a fair comparison, though. So I'm neutral. I don't think that it hurts the argument. I think it's something to be considered.
I think since our evidence is really including only boards, that's probably a good idea to
Yeah.
stick to boards. I'm calling it evidence data, I guess. So any other comments or suggestions for the letter? I like the suggestion of referring to the EO salary and the consistency of our recommendation with what the EO salary study had found. We talked yesterday about that, adding the consultant's opinion.
I believe we mentioned including it not only in the cover letter, but in the background information as well.
Yep.
for the briefing paper, the background information, is the board comfortable with just taking excerpts from that K&H consultant's salary study report and just including them almost as direct quotes in the findings of the briefing paper?
Are you talking about in the briefing paper where we're sort of addressing the timeline?
Yeah.
Sort of a series of events? We'll just add one for 2019, and this survey
Exactly.
came out, the results, and
And we'll just quote directly from it.
that sounds great.
Yeah.
Does the board feel like we need to see this again before we vote and approve on it, and then like a cleaner format?
I don't. I'm comfortable with moving forward.
I'm comfortable with it. I think staff understands where we are in concept and, yeah, just a little bit of cleanup stuff, like, yeah,
Sounds good.
for non-substantive changes.
Are the metrics, though, substantive?
I think as long as they're
Accurate?
accurate and true. And because of the change in the language from a cumulative 15% over the last 5 years versus the 2.5%, 3% ongoing trend, I will take care of that as well.
And I'll proofread, of course, one more time. We'll work on it together before I sign it. Okay,
Are we ready to make a motion?
are you?
I am. How we feeling? Okay. So I move to vote in support of the PTBC staff to work with DCA and the Office of Human Resources and appropriate agencies in obtaining an exempt level change that is appropriate to the PTBC's EO position allocation and organization structure, and to revise the cover letter addressed to Nicole Lee to make non-substantive changes as mentioned by the board in this previous conversation.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Hellaby and a second by Dr. Drummer. Is there any further board comment? Is there any public comment? Roll call vote, please.
Alicia Renee Amen.
Aye.
Jesus Dominguez.
Aye.
Daniel Drummer.
Aye.
Katerina Ellaby.
Aye.
Tanya McMillian.
Aye.
Motion carried, 5-0.
Thank you. Next agenda item is agenda item number 20, the strategic plan update.
So I have some notes that I'd like to share with the board. Our September meeting, we typically do as a kind of a year-end briefing of the previous fiscal year. We give you statistics with sometimes a 3-year, 5-year comparative of previous years in all of our statistics regarding the issuance of licenses, performance for the Consumer Protection Services Unit, and so forth. So I think kind of congruent with that, we're going to do an annual briefing on the strategic plan as we move through it, and just to keep the board members apprised of that kind of progress. So as we've discussed in the past, PTPC's management and staff, with the assistance of facilitators from DCA's Solid Training Program, have developed an action plan based on that strategic plan that you as boards worked on and adopted. The action plan lists out all of the PTPC's goals and objectives, and as part of that, it identifies major tasks, additional responsibilities, assigning responsibilities to specific parties, and establishes expected due dates to measure progress. Couple things that I'd like to kind of point out about the process. The action plan itself is a living document. All goals are a work in progress and require an ongoing assessment, evaluation, kind of a readjustment as we go. A good example of this, if you're looking at the strategic plan, is Objective 2.2, which reads, evaluate and establish position authority for the continuing competency program to help ensure effective operations. And as we discussed yesterday during the EO report, we've been successful in obtaining that position authority for the CC unit, but we'll continue to assess that unit and determine its staffing needs, and if it's appropriate, pursue additional authority for that unit. So while we're calling it a success, there's always that room that we might have to adjust and continue on.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. The
Yes.
strategic plan itself is a guide that expresses the PTBC intent and priorities as it works between the planning session, but it's also important to acknowledge the unknown, the potential, even the need to steer away from the strategic plan given the circumstances, should we face some kind of unforeseen challenges. I'd also like to say, as you can see from kind of the goal listed on the posters in the back of the room, I'm proud to provide the first update. I'm proud of the progress it's made, and staff for their work that led to that progress. So I'll just share a few highlights that I think are important from each goal. So goal 1, the enforcement, specifically objectives 1.2 and 1.3. For 1.2, staff has collected workload data and has prepared a package in pursuit of additional position authority for the probation program, to try and get another Monty, to address that workload. And for 1.3, we've begun a collaborative effort with DCA's Division of Investigation and the Attorney General's Office to develop a training for investigators of PT cases that we hope to hold later in the latter part of 2020.
Fantastic.
Licensing, goal number 2. Again, as previously mentioned, and referencing 2.2, we were successful in obtaining that position authority for continuing comp. For 2.3 and 2.4, our outreach efforts have shown to be effective in informing the educational programs of the application requirements, which we believe has improved the quality of the applications received. Less deficiencies, more complete, makes for a more efficient application process. And again, this is a moving target, just like CC, so we'll continue to reassess and fine-tune and streamline when we can in pursuit of that objective. 2.4, application and licensing staff has shifted a great deal of the workload from paper to Breeze through the electronic portal. And it's not only applications, it's renewals and name changes and address changes, duplicate requests, and even endorsement requests. So we believe that provides a lot of efficiency, not only for us and staff, but for the licensing population as a whole. Moving on to communication education, goal 3. Significant progress has been made in each of the objectives. We've provided you with a number of stats through the EO report, and as you'll hear in the outreach report later this afternoon or this morning, I don't want to steal thunder from that report, so I'm trying to limit that as much as I can. But you see it through our board's newsletters, our social media presence, e-blasts, and through our communication and presentations with the educational programs themselves. And you'll hear more about that during the outreach report. For goal 4, organizational effectiveness, first and foremost, objective 4.1, we're excited to be moving to a new space. But I think you'll see as a result of this move, all of the objectives themselves will benefit from that move, right? Staff will have the space needed to kind of spread out a little and realize the efficiencies that we don't even really appreciate, given the confines of our existing space. 4.2, the establishment of an assistant executive officer. I think this one is somewhat self-explanatory. Divide and conquer, be in 2 places at one time, those kind of things. And hopefully I'll no longer be slowing staff down because they're waiting for my availability for their workload. And then finally, just a note regarding all of the goals you'll see as you instructed us, we've emphasized the need to improve the quality of our procedure manuals in each goal. It's extremely important for training, for attrition. The interesting thing about developing manuals, though, when an organization such as ours is so focused on change and streamlining and efficiency, is that we find ourselves constantly editing those procedure manuals to account for the changes that we're making. It's a vicious circle. It's an ongoing daunting task on a day-to-day basis. It's hard to keep that one on the radar. But I'm thankful for the buy-in and the effort of staff that they've made to improve those manuals. I appreciate it. So, and the goal posters that are in the back of the room will continue to bring back annually, so you can see that progress being made. As a note, I think most of you have seen that we have slightly larger versions of those actually in the PTBC suite, and each goal that references that unit is right there for staff to see it every day when they come in, to see what kind of progress they made, and to generate kind of a sense of competition between the units and performance. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Where do the procedural manuals live?
Traditionally, they've been binders that are, designated for that specific cubicle. So if a staff member comes and goes, that would be the desk manual the next employee could reference. But moving to that electronic form, they now reside on the share drive so that
Good.
all staff members can
That's
be able
good.
to reference them whenever they need them.
Good. I like that. Can you share any of the areas that staff is just having a challenging time addressing? Like you mentioned goal 4 and the move, like some of those are going to come more easily after the move. Is there anything that staff is having a challenging time with that we should be aware of or we could help with? Or
I think one that comes to mind right away that we've discussed previously is in our outreach efforts and trying to increase communication to all of our stakeholders. That largest priority of our stakeholders being the consumers, it's difficult to find the vehicles to reach out to them. I mean, we have some natural mechanisms in place to reach out to applicants and to reach out to licensees, but to really get to the consumers, to make them aware of the board and its role and how we can help them or assist them in their day-to-day with physical therapy services, we're going to have to be very kind of open and broad thinking in who we can collaborate with to try and get that done. And there's a difficulty in that because while we might be reaching out to those, what we're considering vehicles to delivery, there's no incentive for those parties to participate at this point. We have to almost generate the incentive for them. We have to sell it to them and make them, convince them, win the hearts and minds, that kind of thing. So that's one of the most difficult issues to deal with the outreach side of things. I think for all of the goals that are listed on those boards, none of them are actually easy. They all come with quite a bit of an administrative workload. We provide a lot of data in support of some of the requests we make for additional staffing, or again with the move, additional square footage, those kind of things. And staff has been diligent in pursuit of progress in those goals. So.
regarding outreach to consumers, is there any collaboration that can take place with other boards and/or DCA to get some sort of campaign out there?
So we're certainly discussing with DCA, and we have had examples where we're collaborating with other boards at the facilitation of DCA. So one of the examples is we went to a associate level education job fair, and occupational therapy was there, licensed vocational nursing was there. But absolutely, again, it's one of those where we can extend the hand across the aisle. We just need to have somebody on the other side that's
Sure.
receptive to it
Yeah.
and that prioritizes it the same way we do.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that these, that each of the goal posters is maybe in a PDF format or some other
Yes.
type of document. Could those be distributed to the board members?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It would be helpful for me to be able to reference during non-board time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And share that.
Can you describe what the red bar means?
The red bar is an estimate and evaluation of myself and staff of where we think we are in the action plan. And again, that action plan being that kind of living document where, we've established in the action plan what we think we need to do to have a measurable performance at the conclusion of the strategic plan. Having said that, we adjust it as we go sometimes because the priorities shift and change and that kind of thing. But it's just a visual gauge or gauge or an aid that we can use, again, on that day-to-day just to kind of assess where we are. It's not empirical by any means.
Any other board comment or questions?
I really appreciate the update.
Yes.
Yeah. Acknowledge the progress that the staff has made so far.
Absolutely.
We still have plenty of time until 2022, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and having been on the previous strategic plan committee, this is much, much better and improved. So kudos to you and staff for really taking these objectives to heart and working on these and making good progress. Any public comment on strategic plan? Okay. And our next agenda item is 21 regarding the pocket license.
I'd like to turn it on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. Sarah Conley with the license, I'm the manager of the license maintenance program. I'm here to introduce the pocket license agenda item number 21. This item was requested by Dr. Drummer at the last meeting, so staff put together some information and recommendations for you all to consider. In your materials, you have the briefing paper as well as a copy of the physical therapist and physical therapist assistant license or pocket license. In the materials, there's some background and then our recommendation. I'll go ahead and go over that. This issue has been discussed by the board previously in a different context, more what it should look like, what features it should have, and staff was involved in those discussions as well. And it has, with the change in technology and moving forward, that discussion has evolved. And now we're looking at, should we even have a pocket license? And so that's part of the consideration. License verification was mainly the pocket license, and then we had moved to online. The online wasn't fully established, and there were concerns with the information that was available, how current it was, whether it's primary source from the board. So there wasn't another option, continue to issue the pocket license. Now, the information that is available online is more reliable in the sense that it's more current. It is exactly what the board has, the staff have on the, our end. It's displayed immediately. In addition, there's discipline information available online that is not identified on the pocket license. And so those are considerations that we're looking at now as part of this, this item. I spoke with the Board of Registered Nursing, and they have actually already eliminated the pocket license with to address the issue of not having current verification with pocket licenses. So all their licenses verifications are done online. They no longer issue a pocket. So Board of Registered Nursing, as well as the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians. So actually 2 boards are doing this at this time. They did an outreach campaign to notify all of their stakeholders, and the benefits they've identified is the fact that people have all the information about a licensee and it's current, in addition to things such as cost savings for the board, as well as the environmental aspect of it, not printing the paper and the envelopes. We do see that with like returned mail. You have the general paper, use of paper and envelopes, getting it out to licensees, but also that a lot of times that is returned to the board if an address is not current. So then that's waste there.
Can I ask you a question about
Yes.
that piece, Sarah? in sending out the pocket license, the hard copy, and when it's returned undeliverable, is that prompt staff to reach out to that licensee to update their mailing address?
We do. So when we get the license returned, we attempt to contact the licensee, and then we will provide that license to them, when we get the correct information. Sometimes, if we don't have a good phone number or address, then we're not able to do that. So we hold on to it, and hopefully the licensee will contact us. But we do make that attempt, yes.
Okay. Is that a lost opportunity then to like capture that inaccurate data if we're no longer mailing out a physical license? Or is that
Potentially.
that's a burden for the licensee? That's not something that the board should be prioritizing, or like what?
It is the licensee's responsibility, but it is an opportunity at time for us to address it with a licensee. So yes, it would eliminate that opportunity.
I just want to clarify, is it the notification that your license is about to expire that we're getting returned because of an incorrect address? Or is it the actual license itself, that somebody has gone through the process of submitting for their renewal? They've sent the check even.
It's all of it.
And so then we're,
Both.
okay.
So if you think about kind of where we are in the implementation of Breeze and moving to online payment and online processing, our licensees are given the opportunity, even in that transaction, to update their address information, their contact information, phone number, email, and such. Sometimes they don't. And so they pay us, they process it, they make their attestation of continuing competency and no conviction, and they renew their license, leaving the address wrong. And so we'll mail it to them and
Right.
receive it back.
So I understand that part, but I'm not sure how they're even getting the notification that they need to renewal, because that comes in the mail before you.
They might not
Sometimes
be
they don't.
getting it.
Yeah.
They're not actually receiving.
They're just knowing it's time for me to renew.
Right.
So if somebody, if somebody hasn't updated their address, if they haven't made that step to make sure that they're getting
It's
mail, to me, it's a little outstanding that they were able to remember that their license is up for renewal.
It's a very good
even,
point.
And that they're doing that, they're taking that step online without having the address. That's
It's a very good point. Sometimes it's
astounding.
not the licensee themselves that's remembering. It's the employer
Yes.
reminding them.
Yes.
It's, there's other things involved. And, we've made it about as easy as you possibly can. It's the
Absolutely.
last day of your birth month, and you're either odd or even. And so the confusions there happen. And so we'll receive three things usually if the address is incorrect. We'll receive the initial notice of renewal. We'll receive the delinquent, and then even after they've actually somehow managed to pay for the renewal itself, we'll receive the pocket license back in the mail as well sometimes. And so there's different combinations. You just have to think about, sometimes it's just the renewal notice and the delinquent, and then they correct it so they receive their pocket. So there's a lot of different issues that comes with the paper side of it.
Okay. To me, I'm just thinking that an opportunity for a stop in the process is if we get the notification of renewal. We get that back because of an incorrect address.
And we implement that stop.
If that could be a stop in the process, and like, you haven't updated your address, because we got this back. So we're not going to renew, or some sort of a flag that if they do go online on Breeze to try to renew, like, hey, you need
A prompt
to address this issue before you move any further.
Yeah, you can't renew unless you change your address. You gotta
And-
do step one before step two.
And
Or
that's been
fix the problem.
And that's been the status quo. And so we've had the transition from the legacy systems where we'd actually put a hold on a transaction so we could make that or force that correction before we'll actually process the renewal. But in transitioning to Breeze, there was a period of time where that coding didn't carry over into Breeze, but we would do it on a manual basis when we came across
Right.
it. And then also implementing it as an automatic step is in the near future. The issue arises from that, and Kat kind of addressed it. Do we pursue them when we find out we've got return mail or proof of a wrong address? it's difficult. We can't because we have a wrong address, right? So assuming we have the right phone number, we can try. But usually if we have the wrong address, we have an old and outdated phone number as well. And then this board hasn't always had the authority to collect email addresses, so we're still building that email address library of our licensees to rely on. And people tend to change their email addresses often also. And so sometimes we know that in delivery of the newsletter, we see a lot of emails bouncing back because they're no longer valid or good email addresses. So it's a mixed bag of every possible scenario you can think of.
And Sarah, I don't expect you to know this off the top of your head, but do you have a sense of how many or what percent or how significant it is that we do get pocket licenses back?
The pocket licenses aren't as many, it's more the renewal notices and the delinquent notices.
So then they're
It's not a
somehow
great number.
fixing it, once they get to the renewal process, they're fixed. Most of them are fixing it.
It's more recent with Breeze, but we do actually stop we put a flag on the file when we get return mail. Sometimes it happens that we don't get the return mail until after, like, the renewal's been processed, and so we don't have a chance to stop that. But there's an attempt, so.
Yeah, sequence isn't always on our side.
Okay,
But it's not as much, we get a lot more renewals back.
okay.
But that can be for a lot of reasons, people.
But we are able to now put a flag somehow on.
On the record.
On the record.
Yep.
Okay, very
And
good.
most of them are getting corrected. There's still a handful that aren't.
As far as,
The
well,
pocket license,
yes, yeah.
resulting in the pocket license
Yeah.
coming back.
There's
I'm
fewer,
sorry.
but it does still happen.
Okay. And then
But
there's
really
a,
big hands when we're talking about it.
there's a sentence at the end of the paper that says, "No other boards have implemented paperless licensing."
And so it is Board of Registered Nursing as well as Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians.
Those
I
are the
apologize.
ones, okay.
Those are the two boards
other
that have
PTs.
implemented
Yeah.
paperless.
Okay.
So, just to conclude the introduction, you have staff's recommendations, and if you could, have your discussion and then direct staff to either move forward with eliminating the paperless license or the pocket license. If you need additional information, we can provide that at a future meeting, or if you want to continue to issue the pocket license and not pursue paperless, then that would be another direction as well.
Say it.
Me? Sarah, I just had a quick question, because occasionally I will get contacted by employers or even graduates who have already received their license but haven't received their pocket license yet. And for the employers, no, I really need to see that little, paper. And I will sort of remind them that it's a legal document that you can see online through Breeze. So I know that nursing sort of launched this 6-month outreach campaign to sort of educate the stakeholders. I imagine that you sort of have the same notion in sort of educating employers especially.
Yeah, that was definitely
Yeah,
part of the
yeah.
discussion, was because we think that a lot, especially like insurance companies, they
Yep.
want to see the pocket license. And so I asked about their transition, and they just, those entities had to, we had to, had to be worked with the board and
Yep.
and find that this is the way to verify the license. And the transition had to happen, and yes, they worked with them.
And we realize for those stakeholders that that's a bit of a cultural shift.
Correct.
But it's a cultural shift that would benefit even those employers, because there's a certain obsolescence now to the paper pocket license compared to the information that they can receive through verification online. One, immediately the efficiency is there for both the licensee and the employer. The information is firsthand. There's no hounding of the employee to get the copy of the wallet license, waiting for that process, waiting for snail mail to deliver it to them. It's instantaneous and immediate. It's also more accurate. Things can happen between the issuance of that pocket license and when that verification is being done during that 2-year period of time. So there's an issue with clarification of actually clear information being provided to the employer. And we feel administratively the urgency and that heat from our licensees who aren't really even interested in having that pocket license themselves, but for any reason for the employer. And so we want to encourage those stakeholders to utilize the online system, which is, again, more efficient and much more accurate information.
Part of what prompted this discussion, or the initiation of this discussion, was my own experience in monitoring the licensed population at the hospital where I work, and that the Occupational Therapy Board, beginning with this year, in January 2019, started issuing a different kind of a license that doesn't have a signature on it. It simply has the licensee's name and their license, their type of license, and the expiration date. But there's no opportunity for a signature to appear unless the individual were to just put it somewhere. So, yeah.
And that is a consideration of doing something like electronic license where you issue out like a PDF or something, but you still have the issue of it not being real time. You print that out, give it to the employer, and they have that for 2 years and don't go back and verify something may have happened in that 2 years. So it kind of goes back to that consumer protection issue.
In my mind, it doesn't matter for the employer. I mean, that really isn't part of our discussion. Our discussion, for me, is really more about the licensee wanting to be able to have that. If the employer is asking for it and it's no longer offered, then the employee just says it's only online now. It's only digital. The one thing that I would potentially want to try to consider is the ability for the licensee to print, to have access to some sort of version that they could print, and if they want to have it in their pocket because that's what they've always had and they feel comfortable with that. Very similar to an insurance card, that insurance companies very often are not providing a card that says that you're insured anymore. All the information is online. Your account number you can be pulled up as soon as you log into their app, and you show that to whoever you need to, whether it's a bank for a home loan or I believe for auto insurance as well. I don't. So that would be the one consideration that I would ask, if that's a possibility or not.
I think it's certainly possible. I think it's something that's probably off very far in kind of the distant future. But having said that, to address it, we've made changes to the actual online verification system, that there's a very printer-friendly version of that information that we ask other states to use for licensure endorsement, right? It has all the information that would be considered primary source for them to determine license is in good standing, what the expiration date, when it was issued, and that it's real time and it was refreshed within the last couple hours. So I think that could suffice for some of those needs. And then the second point, and this is just from a completely different perspective, is that the alternative to this pocket license is the requirement to wear a name tag. And so there's a consumer benefit here too, because another cultural shift would be asking all of our licensees to identify themselves with name tags, as opposed to conspicuously posting that wallet license somewhere in the practice where all of your patients are going to be able to see it. I think it's a consumer benefit that information will now become more readily available to them. Everybody that they receive physical therapy services from will be then, now with no wallet license available for posting, would be required to wear that name tag that identifies who they are and what level of license they hold.
I like it.
I actually think that that's more of a consumer benefit and more of a consumer right.
Yeah.
Because the consumer has the right to know who's providing care to them. In the hospital setting, I don't carry my pocket license and show that to them. I do have a name tag for the hospital where I work, and it has my name in the appropriate level font, and it has PT. So that information is there for them to do.
And just in vague kind of hypotheticals, there are oftentimes in cases where that's one of the issues that we're trying to identify, is were name tags being used, was the wall license properly displayed. And it's a frustrating kind of thing through investigations to have to remediate licensees that, as an example, displaying the wall licenses for everyone that's employed in that practice in the employee break room doesn't suffice the requirement for the consumer. And so this is something that I'm very in support of for that matter.
Thank you for the research and the work on this. I personally, because I was one who initiated this, I'm very much in favor of moving forward with this. I do, however, want to try to take some time to discuss this since we have this information and now it is a very feasible thing. I would actually like us to hold until potentially the December meeting so that we have opportunity to discuss with licensees that we come in contact with, or if somebody wants to be able to provide some comment, similar to what we do with our regulatory process, just to make sure that everybody's on board, that, that there's no wild examples of things where this is going to cause problems
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
we haven't become aware of. Yeah.
I think using this as kind of the starting point and agendizing it for comment from stakeholders at the next meeting and, incrementally speaking, I think that's a great idea.
To potentially address some anticipated questions, did have a chance to meet with staff regarding this issue, and there is no regulation or statute that would be required to be changed for us to eliminate the pocket license. There is a provision of the Business and Professions Code, which is section 164 or 146? I think it is 164, that provides that the form and content of any license, certificate, or permit is part of the duties of the Director of Consumer Services, of the department, that is, Consumer Affairs, but that there's a consultation that occurs. So we believe that the way BPN did this was a letter to the director, but that doesn't seem like an obstacle for you. So you can accomplish this via motion and direction to staff.
Do we have any licensees in the audience who would like to provide any public comment regarding moving from a pocket license to merely having the information real-time online? Who'd like to comment on this? Come forward. Feel free to come forward and use the microphone, introduce yourself. We value your opinion if you have one. Yeah.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. My name's Rebecca Chima. I'm actually seeking license in California. I just moved here from Nevada. I'm a physical therapist assistant, yeah. And I think it's a great forward movement of your board to go to eliminating the pocket license and having it online. And that's just a voice of experience in a previous state, that it's very efficient, effective, and eliminates some of the returns of the lost mails.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other public comment? And further board discussion or motion?
I agree with Dr. Drummer that I think it's wise to hold this until the next meeting and agendize it so we can make sure all of the stakeholders have an opportunity to provide comment before we take action.
Is there any additional information that you would direct staff to collect or provide at
Yeah.
that meeting?
Cost savings. I would like to know how much of our budget would be affected by this change.
Okay.
I'm assuming that we are probably billed by the Breeze system somehow for the pocket license, for the production and pocket license that gets mailed out.
The most significant cost savings would be in the printing costs and the mailing costs.
Yeah.
So the Breeze transaction fees, I don't think we'd realize too much cost savings from that itself, but the actual printing costs and the mailing costs is something we can bring an estimate back for.
And I'm still expecting that we would continue to do the notification of renewal.
Renewal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's still going to be,
Yeah.
right, that's still going to continue in hard copy form the way that it is. And I think that that's in my mind, at this point, that's still appropriate to be able to continue until we're able to get more, potentially until we're able to get more email addresses and have them somehow be mandated as accurate.
Yeah, I do kind of foresee a time where we become a little bit, or we're more comfortable with the library or the reliability of the email addresses that we have, where the recommendation may be to eliminate that as well. But again, after we've seen better performance of those email addresses in that notification process.
To take that one step further, does Breeze have the capability to text? Like we have accurate cell phone numbers? I feel like people change that less than emails, but I'm not sure if that's even a technological possibility.
Not currently.
Okay.
So the option that I would, or the one request that I would have is is there a way to be able to have some sort of a printable, and I appreciate very much the document version, because I create a PDF document to be able to put into our.
But something in that form
But
factor.
something in,
Absolutely.
that you could, because my CPR card comes that way. After I complete my CPR, I get an email that has a link to a printable document that has a card that I can then print and then cut out and put in my wallet, so I have it.
That being said, you did comment in the past about the size of the pocket license and how it's not like a traditional business card size and how it's folded.
Current pocket license, current
to
pocket license dimensions.
Revisit that and bring that up again.
Yeah, require, the current versions require trimming and, so it'll fit into the wallet.
I think that's a possibility because the license verification draws directly from Breeze. And in the Breeze file, anytime that pocket license currently is issued, a copy of that you can actually see inside of the file. So it would be just changing the permissions and shifting some things around, but we'll have to discuss it with DCA's OIS team.
In the process of finding out cost savings, I would like to know if this would have any effect on somebody's employment. So that's important.
And hopefully that's a little bit more information that we'll be able to gather as we talk to licensees or get feedback from them about, if they think that it might impact.
No, I'm meaning would this eliminate a job somewhere within? No, it wouldn't. Okay.
As it pertains to my staff?
Yes.
No.
Or somebody who works
Sure.
in a
DCA's,
mailroom
sure,
somewhere,
something like
or
that.
something of that nature. Remember, I'm labor.
Yeah, absolutely. Robot tax, really, when you think about it at that point. We can bring some data back for that. I can only speculate for the numbers for the board, but this is something that's kind of a trend that you're seeing happening across DCA too. So what our contribution is, of course.
I'm open to re-agendizing it, open to getting more input from licensees. I'm not hopeful that that's going to happen. We've agendized it for this meeting. I don't anticipate a lot of people showing up. I could be wrong.
One of the things that we can do in the interim too is reach out to CPTA and see if there's anything that they can assist us with in collecting some of that information.
That'd be great. Thank you. Yes.
Would it be helpful too, is for the next agenda, is be more specific, that it might actually be a discussion about eliminating the pocket license versus, this was just kind of an introduction about, looking at the pocket license.
Right.
The agenda might be more clear, that might draw more attention.
Definitely.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, the agenda item would read something to the lines of discussion and possible board action regarding eliminating the pocket license.
Yeah, regarding eliminating.
Printed pocket license.
Printed and mailed.
And mailed.
Credit card size.
Sarah, in the beginning of her introduction, just reminded me is that we've had this discussion in the past. When I was staff in the applications and licensing unit, I did the briefing paper. And at the time, we were trying to put the licensee's picture on a plastic hard card version of the pocket license. So you can see how quickly technology can kind of change and obsolescence is, right.
I would like to add in the conversation, add the option of allowing the student to decide if they would like to have the option, if they would like to have a card mailed or, or receive an online printable version of it, because that's one of the things that the Red Cross will do. You don't have to get the link from the Red Cross. You can actually request a card be mailed to you. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks, but
Sure.
you can't, I know.
And we're required to use American Heart Association for our CPR renewal at work. And I don't believe the AHA I don't think they offer a hard copy card option.
Thank you, Sarah. Oh, one more opportunity for public comment. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Dolberg. I'm the PT program director here. I just wanted to add, I'm all in favor of getting rid of the pocket license, but one thing came up in terms of accreditation from CAPTE. It would be nice to be able to download and print a license, because that was one of the documentation pieces that the accreditor looks at, that all of our faculty are licensed. I'm sure they could log on to the website, but in terms of providing all of the documentation up front for them, that is something that we provide to CAPTE through the reaccreditation process.
At the December meeting, we'll actually provide printed copies, examples of what that looks like currently in the system, because, again, other states are actually using it for endorsement of licensure for, mobility and transferring from state to state. So it was an undertaking to capture all of the elements on that single piece of paper that all of the 53 jurisdictions want on the paper, and just so.
Yeah.
Because you talked about portability, do states who have participated in the compact have is there some agreed upon format for licensure? I know that we're not, and we're not accepting compact as an option.
So essentially, what does the wallet look like for practice to privilege?
Do they have something special with compact, or do you know?
It's an excellent question. I have no idea. I'll have to look.
Okay.
Yeah, and Rebecca, some of us have talked about looking up a license for different reasons. I've looked one up for a clinical instructor course, and instead of having those instructors send me their pocket license, I just screenshot what's current, and it's got the date, and it says, the license is valid.
I'm sure that's,
Yeah.
as long as there's something that I can download or screenshot, absolutely. And I know for our students, absolutely, they would rather not have a piece of paper and be quickly able to be employed
Yeah.
after passing the board exam.
And to Dr. Dahmer's point, to be able to just display it on, the 4:3 landscape phone and just show their employer, this is my pocket
And I know that
license, like we do everything
The
else.
employers would be happy with that as well. Instead of waiting for that piece of
Yeah.
paper to come in the mail, they're ready to hire our graduates
And
right
so
away.
this wouldn't be applying to the new licensee who gets the wall license.
The wall certificate would still continue.
They're still going to get that as their
But they would,
souvenir.
they could
But-
still be verified
Oh,
as
yeah.
licensed on the board website by an
yes.
employer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's,
Yeah.
I think that would be a benefit all around.
They can now.
Yeah,
They still wait for the pocket.
we still have employers who
Require it.
wait and require that.
There's an impossibility of law, though, at that point. If you cannot be required to provide it if it's not something that's providable. Right,
Correct.
so if we
Right.
eliminated it at that point, the employers and the insurance companies would be forced to adapt, similar to the Board of Registered Nursing or Licensed Vocational
And
Nursing.
I think the employers that our graduates are employed with would be happy to do that, but there
Yeah.
are still some that perhaps think they need to wait for that piece of paper in hand.
Oh, yeah.
My employer insists on having the pocket license.
Yes.
And so the licensee has to go to the copy machine, scan it. Luckily, they're able to scan now and then have a digital version instead of having to make a just make a copy and hand that in. But we're required to do that because that's what the employer wants,
Yeah,
because
but
it's
I think-
available.
I think employers are ready to make that switch if that's, I mean, I can't speak for employers, but the ones that we're in contact with, I would be
Yeah.
happy.
And personally, I haven't been asked, I think, in 11 years for a pocket license. Yeah.
With a new licensee, they get their wall certificate license. Do they also get a pocket license
Yes.
right away?
Right away.
Okay. I don't remember, I mean,
Yeah, and-
1,000 years ago, when I got mine, I don't recall, but.
And I, to Dr. Ari's kind of not being asked for it in a very long time, just from common conversations with licensees, some don't even realize that what they receive is the pocket license and that you cut it out of that, So, I mean, the obsolescence starts to become kind of obvious.
Just to add, part of our research into BRN and BBNPT is what those boards did was create a FAQ document on their website that if an employer did ask for a license, they could provide that, which discusses the fact that they're no longer available and to use the Breeze version.
So maybe in December, if staff resources allow, some sort of a suggested plan for us to kind of look at.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, that we can consider would be great. Yeah. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. Any other board comment? Any other public comment? Okay, we've got a request for a break. It's 10:22. If we can come back at 10:32, we'll take a 10-minute break, please. Back, and it's 10:32. We're going to pick up with agenda item number 22, Administrative Services.
Good morning. My name is April Beauchamp. I'm the Communication and Education Analyst, and I'll be going over 22A and B today. So we'll start with 22A, the budget report. So if we look at the expenditure report for quarter 4, we can see that we are overspending on personnel services. The biggest is in temp help. This is just due to us not having a budget for it at this moment. And then we managed to stay in budget in operating expenses. And in the end, we are projecting $127,081 to revert back into the fund. And then looking at the 3-year milestones expenditure report from fiscal year 16-17 to fiscal year 18-19. In personnel services, we have increased about 21%. And then under operating expenses in general services, we decreased 35%. In department services, we increased 8%. And in enforcement totals, we decreased 39%. In the 3-year milestones revenue report, the revenue increased 11% over the past 3 years. And then on the fund report, we do have, for the months in revenue, we're staying pretty steady. We're not really going up, but we're not declining too much either. So it's staying pretty steady for the most part.
Did the board have any questions?
I'm looking at the fund condition page. Does the Attorney General rate increase every year, or does it happen every few years?
There is an adjustment from the Attorney General costs that's done yearly. This year is a significant increase, and not an anticipated one. It was a surprise to most of the boards and bureaus in DCA. So thankfully for us, it's going to have an impact, but it's not an impact that we can't manage for some of the other boards and bureaus that are already in dire straits or at risk of insolvency, this could be a tipping point for them. But again, every year we receive that adjustment, and sometimes we've received cost reductions based on what they've done. But this year, the increase is quite significant.
Thank you.
Nice to see the months in reserve kind of staying right around that 8-month.
Yeah, obviously, after we're successful in our move to the new location,
Yeah.
you're going to see a dip in that fund condition as a result of the costs of that move, initial costs, and even ongoing for that matter.
Yeah.
But we still anticipate kind of a rebound effect. Revenues will start to fatten the fund a little bit, but projections out, taking into account growth, a 2% annual increase because of inflation and pro rata and in-department, out-of-department costs increasing, there will be a point in the future where our revenues won't be able to suffice our budget, and we'll have to look at our fees once again.
And just to continue on that a little bit, thank you, Jason, you will see the fund condition go. It will change and probably decrease in the event of the move. The costs are going to be included in that. Just be mindful that the facility lease increase is only included in this, so that means rent. So those things will be added in, and we can bring that back to the end of the fiscal year, this coming up current year. That information will be updated, provided to the board members.
So in this example of this fund condition, you'll see in month 21, 22, that we go from 8.3 down to 7.9, right? So we start to spend a little bit more than we're taking in, and that doesn't account for those initial one-time move costs that we're going to be having to expend.
When you say initial one-time move costs,
Construction, build out, new cubicle furniture, that kind of thing, of moving upstairs.
is that happening all at once or incrementally?
So that will happen all at once.
It will.
And right now, we are under statutory authority language to pay for that. So once those costs happen, instead of doing a BCP in preparation and trying to estimate costs for all of the boards that are within the Evergreen location, there was a legislative bill drafted that allows us to just pull those costs from the fund outside of what we have allocated by the governor's budget. But that language has a sunset date attached to it as well. And so there's kind of, we're hoping the move actually happens while that language is still there. Otherwise, we're either going to have another piece of legislation extended for that. But that will, just having those initial costs pulled from the fund, affect this fund condition initially. And then you'll start to see revenues kind of balance that back out. But projections right now, 21, 22, we're starting to see the revenue or the fund conditions start to deplete over time because of projected cost increases one fiscal year to another.
And we still have our piggy bank for the move?
Yeah, there is still, we have an architectural revolving fund where we've taken our costs that we've reverted back from the past two fiscal years. It's a $400,000 set aside, $200,000 each year. You heard that this year we're projected to revert a little over $120,000. So that helps with this fund
Yes,
condition and those cost
absolutely.
savings and those kind of things. But that ARF isn't enough to sustain the
Right. actual
actual cost of the move, build out, construction, equipment, and that kind of thing.
Is it a quarter?
Estimates conservatively a third.
A third?
Yeah.
My apologies, Jason, I think you said this, but just remind me. How long do you think it will take to sort of rebound from the upfront cost of the relocation before we start to be concerned about looking at our fees?
So right now, even if we weren't moving, and only taking into account the increase in the lease cost itself per square footage and the additional square footage, we would start to see our fund condition diminish in 21, 22, right? But that's to be expected. 21, 22 at that point will be 5 years past the previous adjustment in renewal fees and application fees. So it's natural to think at that point with the cost of inflation and overhead that we'll have to do a reassessment.
What's the cost increase per square foot from our current lease to the new one?
The cost increase right now is, we were at about $1.75 a square foot, and we're moving to $1.95 a square foot. But even in that lease, there are step increases over the term of the lease. And so I think it's every 2 years.
2 years.
There's an incremental increase of about 5%.
And we're currently in how many square feet?
4,400,
And we're moving to,
just under 9,000.
that we need that is amazing. But I know that we do. I very much understand that we absolutely need that we've been
For those of
functioning-
you
that we've
have-
been functioning as a 9,000 square foot operation
in
in a 4,500 square foot space
Yeah.
without bunk beds.
Just to be clear, the new space has a closet room to
It
expand?
has plenty of space. And my previous plans of, running swing shifts for staff, so half are at night, and I don't have to do that anymore.
I have a question about the ARF. Is that information reflected in any of these financial statements or in the narrative? Or is that just something you know off the top of your head as far as?
No.
It's not reflected here,
It's not.
but we're well aware of it in just the planning stages for
Okay.
this move. So
Is that something we can include in future
Yeah, absolutely.
materials? Thank you. I'm good.
Any other further board comment on budget?
Shout out to Carl for everything that he does to keep us, in the black.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Carl.
just to emphasize that point, we still are, as most state agencies are, struggling with the fiscal system and reconciling our accounts over time. So yes, shout out to Carl and staff for, giving me the solace that I can sleep at night and I don't have to keep these numbers at the forefront of my mind.
And then we get to see numbers. Otherwise, we might not get to see the whole picture, so we appreciate it. Is there any public comment on the budget? Okay.
Okay, so we'll go to 22B, outreach. So for the website, during the fourth quarter, the website had 202,544 web hits. Compared to last year's quarter four, this was an 8% decrease. The highest decrease was in the laws tab with a 20% decrease, which that's kind of stayed the same. It's always the laws tab now. A lot of this is due to outreach efforts and passing out the laws and regs books, passing out the QR cards that take them straight to the book, so they're no longer having to go onto the website to get to it. Forms also had a significant decrease of 19%, so not too far behind. We expect forms to continue to drop just because we are taking the forms off the website slowly and trying to move into everything digital and online. Due to Facebook and listserv and being able to post the links that take people directly to the publications page, the publications does have a significant increase of 68%. So when the newsletter was released on May 29th, we did the listserv, we did the Facebook posts, and when they click on the link to see the newsletter, it takes them to the website. So that is why that is so high compared to the others. For fiscal year 18-19 as a whole, there was a 8% decrease for the whole year on the website. Again, this is due to us going green and trying to steer people more towards Breeze. Looking at the 3-year milestone for the website, we can see an overall decrease of 13.58%, again, due to directing applicants and licensees to Breeze for applications and license maintenance instead of them going to the website, printing out forms, and mailing it in. And then for Facebook, during quarter four, Facebook had 30,557 people access our page. Compared to last year's quarter four, there was an 18% decrease. This has to do with So prior, Twitter and Facebook, we were able to link them. So when we retweeted something on Twitter, it would go directly to Facebook. They stopped that these last couple months, so now we don't have that, and so it kind of messed with our numbers a lot. But we are working on obtaining a software that'll be able to help us link all of our social media platforms, and so that we expect that to cause it to go back positive again. The overall traffic for the whole year for fiscal year 2018-19 compared to last fiscal year has increased 16%. And we can see, looking at the 3-year milestones, Facebook has increased 3.32% from fiscal year 2016-17 to this fiscal year 2018-19. And then fiscal year 2018 to 2019 has had the highest traffic of all 3 years. And then as far as outreach events, so in quarter 4, we went to the DCA licensing fair at West Hills College in Lemoore. We did a school presentation at Casa Loma on April 25th, CSU Northridge on April 26th, and Sacramento City College on May 1st. And then for fiscal year 2018-19, we have attended 15 outreach events. So that includes the schools and 2 licensing events that we went to. We went to CPTA and then the licensing fair. And then, like I said, 13 of them were school presentations. As of now, we have been to 12 out of the 32 programs in California, so that we are at 38% of all the schools in California, so we're really excited about that. And once we do have schools scheduled that we haven't been to yet, so once we hit those schools, we'll be at 58% or 56% with 18 out of 32 schools being visited. And we still have more coming in. So our hopes are to visit every program, PT and PTA program in California by the end of the strategic plan. And we're getting there. So,
Can you tell us a little bit about the last newsletter that went out and the response you received from schools that you hadn't heard from yet?
we are getting an overwhelming amount of responses from school. As of now, we have, well, since the newsletter went out, we've had at least 2 to 3 schools booked a month up until December, and then we have 2 more schools in April. There's still more coming in that we're trying to align for next year too. So we do have schools already booked into 2020 because of the newsletter. And we've had schools reach out about hosting board meetings too because of the newsletter. So
Nice.
it was really successful.
Okay, fantastic. Can you talk about the upcoming newsletter?
The upcoming newsletter should be coming out end of October is our goal. We've already sent all the articles over. It's really interesting. There's going to be an article in there from a probationer. That's a really interesting read. And then there's some of the same type of stuff, still outreach. There's a continuing comp article. There's an article on benefits of attending a board meeting because there's so many of those and we need people to come. So everybody's welcome.
Other board comment?
Since we did the first student Q&A yesterday, will that be a part of this newsletter or future newsletters?
A future one, yes. We've already sent all the articles for the one that's coming out. But yes, and there's also going to be student feedback, just like we had in the last newsletter. We plan to keep with that because that brought a lot of feedback too. And I think when other schools and program directors see the students' feedback and how much they get out of having us come, it makes them want us to come also. So we're going to continue. We're going to try to make that a staple in every newsletter to put the student feedback.
Quick question. Thank you, April. I'm actually really interested about that probationers piece. Have we ever done that before in our newsletters?
No.
No, I think it's a great idea.
Yes, it is. You guys are going to enjoy it. I enjoyed reading it a lot.
Is there an opportunity to get any consumer perspective into our newsletter?
We'd certainly like to try.
Yeah. Not sure what that looks like, just thinking about it. Yeah.
We actually have made a request to the Public Affairs Division of DCA for a consumer outreach piece. You might have seen recently in the news that a very famous comedian was in a very bad car accident and is going to be having physical therapy in California for 8 to 9 months. And if our public affairs unit at DCA is able to make contact or connection for us on our behalf, that we might be able to spotlight that in some way and use it as an article piece, we'll try.
It's amazing to see how the outreach has expanded and grown since I've been on the board, so you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Are we still getting similar submissions or interest from the interaction of the profession with consumers on a volunteer or service basis? Like that highlight you did for the skate.
Oh, yes,
park.
there'll be an article in there as well, a PT Spotlight. We plan on keeping those in all the newsletters too.
Great. And you've got enough to work with?
I have a few, so I'm open to if the board or anybody has anybody they would like to nominate, please email me.
Is that also in the newsletter?
Yes.
If you'd like to nominate someone?
Yes,
Yeah.
I even did Facebook posts about it too. So
Fantastic.
we're trying to get the word out there as much as possible.
Do we have enough to highlight someone monthly, or is that a little bit too daunting?
Not yet. So I'm hoping that we start getting more in, and then because I would love to be able to do that monthly. I think it's so important.
Ideally, if we build enough of a library of requests, that the overflow could definitely go to the social media kind of realm and keep the more significant contributions to the newsletter.
Okay. I'm willing to help with recommendations.
Thank you.
Any other board comment on outreach? We're happy that there is carryover from the outreach to, the efficiencies that you see with staff and applications and licensing. That's awesome. Yeah. All right, sounds good. Any public comment on outreach? All right, thank you, April.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, on to agenda item number 23, application services.
Sarah Conley for Application Services. So, in your report, I do have a correction for quarter four, fiscal year 17-18 and 18-19. The data got switched. So we actually have increases from 17-18 to 18-19. That it was just in the wrong spot. So I just want to let you know.
Any particular column?
The whole section
Okay.
for those two fiscal year quarter four
Okay,
areas. But the big thing with applications right now, from year to year, and you'll also see it in a 3-year comparison, is the increase in online. That's really been our focus, and it's really, you see it in the data. It's huge. So, other than that, I don't really have any other, anything to bring your attention to.
how's that affecting you and your staff?
The team members that are processing applications really appreciate the online process, because the applicant can enter a lot of that information, and they're able to focus on their portion, which is evaluating the information versus the data entry side of it. So they really appreciate that. And it just makes it all more efficient, having everything already uploaded when the applicant can do that, because otherwise, if they don't do it online, we have to do all that on our end, and it takes away from, like I said, the evaluation of the application, of scanning the information in. Whereas if the applicant does it on Breeze on their side, already taken care of.
Are you seeing more accurate and complete applications coming in as a result of your outreach?
Oh, yes, definitely. The outreach is hugely beneficial, and I think it helps the applicants navigate just the overall process better. They know what to expect, what's coming, what they need to do, the time frames. I think it's hugely beneficial.
Can you say anecdotally that you're receiving less phone calls and/or emails asking for clarification because they're getting that education from the outreach?
Yes.
Okay,
I think,
good.
yeah. I mean, we do still get phone calls, status
Yeah.
checks, clarification, but it's not the consistent, of what do I do? How do I apply? It's more, and the questions are more specific and focused versus just what do I do?
Yeah.
So with the outreach and the information online, I think we're really getting there. I mean, we still have some work to do, but I think it's really helping.
The other added benefit of moving to Breeze and having that data entry element, not having to utilize staff to do that, is it also frees them up to answer those much more specific phone calls.
Yes.
So dispersing their time more evenly through the task.
Any other board comment on licensing? Applications. Any public comment on applications?
So the data that's provided, so you have your year-to-year comparison as well as the quarter-to-quarter. Also, since the end of the fiscal year, we did a 3-year comparison, and that just, we focused on online versus paper, because that's kind of been our theme, and so you can just really see the increase. For the first chart in the materials is all the applications received, and you see from 16-17, which is when we started with Breeze, to now. And really the jump from 17-18 to now is attributed to the outreach.
The part that I've experienced with that firsthand is going to a school to do a presentation and then having conversations with, say, the program director of that school, who has, up to that point, for the purpose of organization and efficiency for their students, managed the application process, submitted, all of the applications for the graduating class in a bulk envelope with the P1Es and a check and all those kind of things, and trying to almost untrain them in their good intentions in doing that, and shifting them back to Breeze and reassuring them that it'll be even faster and it's much more efficient. We're seeing the results of that through the outreach.
And I think just, not only the outreach opportunities, going out and talking to the schools, but we actually have a team member who's the liaison between the board and the schools. And so there's a point of contact for the directors, to reach out when they have questions or want to, need clarification, or has a student who needs something. And I think that's really helped too, because the schools have been in contact with us, have been very helpful in getting our information out to the students. And we're very appreciative.
It's an excellent reminder. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up, but that point of contact, you're at Trent, and our outreach coordinator, April Beauchamp, I'm usually at those presentations, and that's the intent, but we always planned at some point that we should be able to divide and conquer, be in 2 places at one time. And then on my behalf, I'd like to thank staff, because due to unforeseen injury, or whatever you'd like to call it, there's been a couple times where I haven't been able to make those outreach presentations myself, and April and Yura have presented on my behalf and just taken over seamlessly. I've got nothing but positive feedback from those program directors, and so we may have implemented that plan a little earlier than we thought we would, but that's what happens when bones break, and
And one thing, we talk a lot about efficiencies, but I also just want to note on the other side of that, we do have a lot of efficiencies, but it doesn't completely outweigh the volume. And so, if there were any applicants watching or anything like that, that we still have to get through the number of applications that we receive. So we're getting there, and I think we still have more efficiencies to realize, but the volume is still growing. And, with the data, it does show, like Ms. Constantio had mentioned earlier, about a 2.5–3% increase year over year. So, and then just us. So just a few of us.
it never goes down.
Ms. Alabi, any comments?
I'm just amazed at the increase in online applications for PTs and PTAs just from one fiscal year to the next. It seems like a tremendous, almost like doubling. And just hearing how that's increased efficiency for your staff and allowed them to focus on like the analyst aspect, not just, data entry admin stuff. I think that's definitely the direction that you want your staff to be moving in and what you want them to be focusing on. So it seems like it's working. I think
And
that this is the evidence of that. Yeah.
that just reminded me, there's things we can do in Breeze that we haven't deployed yet. And with these other efficiencies, we can work on getting new services and adding that and providing more information to licensees. One of those things being using the Breeze account more fully, so applicants can have that information on their online Breeze account versus having to check their email. They can just go and check their account. And then it also helps establish that routine. So when you're up for renewal, you go to your Breeze account for that. And just using that as your board account, basically, and using that for everything. So we really want to move that direction.
Oh, something that came up at the life meeting for FSBPT is that they're moving away from social security numbers as the unique identifier to an FSBPT ID. Say that 10 times fast. And so I'm just curious to see how that's going to affect your sort of like applications aspect. I don't know if they've rolled it out yet or if that's sort of like on the horizon for them, but how to manage that. Is that something that would be on your side, or is that totally just FSBPT, or will you have a place in Breeze where like people can look up their FSBPT ID and their license number?
They are separate currently,
Okay.
and the information we get from FSBPT has different matching criteria, so a social security number wouldn't be the sole identifier.
Birthday or something like that?
Yeah, so
Okay.
there's name, birthday, there's other things. And then the information comes through an interface to match through Breeze, but as far as like the applicant looking for the information online, we do have two separate systems on their end. So they go through their FSBPT account for their exam information, and then their application information would be through Breeze.
And do we store social security numbers?
In our database, yes.
Yeah,
we do
okay.
have them.
Would we transition to that FSBPT ID on the horizon, or would we continue to maintain that?
We would continue because we have a statutory mandate to collect either SSNs or ITINs.
Okay.
So while FSBPT is kind of de-identifying that and creating their own identifying number, which I'm encouraging, that's perfectly fine because I'd rather be the gatekeeper of that very sensitive information. There may be a time in the future where we're able to kind of hyperlink over. So if on our system that a licensee only really knows their FSBPT ID, that we might be able to help them with that. But that's something that we'll have to look at in Breeze.
Okay. Thank you.
The foreign educated applications online are also increasing. How are we getting that word to those applicants?
A lot of times, foreign applicants do call prior to applying, and really that's how we connect with them.
Yes.
We walk them through that process and recommend. We do have more work to do on the information provided to them online to get them more fully automated.
Yeah.
But we are receiving credential evaluation reports online. So in some respects, they have, those applications are going automated in different ways. But we do just recommend they apply online, and it's slowly moving that direction.
Yeah.
But we just don't have the same outreach opportunities that we do with the California, specifically California schools.
But it's
So-
still increasing, which is good.
They as a group are really actually pretty good at providing information to each other through forums and that kind of thing. So we've seen some of the information kind of spread like wildfire. So once we have those conversations with one foreign applicant, they've gotten kind of it through word of mouth from other foreign applicants who are, using each other as a reference.
And you talked about, little by little updating the website. And I didn't bring this up when April was up here, but we are hopefully going to get a new website, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other board comment on applications or public comment on applications? Let's move into agenda item number 24, licensing.
So you have licensing information in your materials. We did add back in the license status numbers, so the population, the current population for this year and last year. So you can see the growth there. The online usage, it's kind of been our theme, isn't as great as the applications have been. But it's still there, and it's slowly increasing for all the different transactions. The trends for the 3-year data is showing the increase that follows the renewals, because the renewal transaction, obviously, that's the greatest volume that we have. The name changes, duplicates, address changes is much lower than the renewals. So,
I will say, I think Sarah's being far too humble, though. 83% for renewals being processed online is a huge number, especially for some of the other DCA boards that are on Breeze. That may not have launched their applications all online at the same time they went live with Breeze. They kind of did a stepped approach where we, from the very beginning, had our applications, had our renewal and everything online. We're seeing the benefit of that. 83% is really good. With names processed and address changes, you'll see that that's going to increase significantly over time, because we've removed the paper applications from the website and steered them towards Breeze anyway. So we expect, this time next year, a huge, significant increase from fiscal year to fiscal year for that as well.
Any board member comments or questions on the licensing report? Any comments on the 3-year bar graph? I like it. I like the visual. Yeah, it's really nice. Thank you.
So this is for the end of the fiscal year, overview, and we did 3 years because that was when we started with Breeze, so the data is all consistent. Is there anything the board would like to see we're still a year away, but just since we're talking about it now, obviously we can look at volume increases, but was there anything else you'd like to see in the data that's presented, for the end of year comparison, but also just in general for applications or licensing?
My brain has a difficult time catching up to the numbers presented, like on page 83 for the jurisprudence exam.
Okay.
When I look at the column all the way to the right, sometimes I get confused at realizing what those numbers mean.
Okay.
Increase in 5%, decrease in 8%, total increase 2%, pass rate 3%. And I don't know relationship-wise between those numbers, kind of what's going on there.
Is the total number of people who took the test?
Correct.
And then pass and fail was
Okay.
above that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've had in that example, we've had a 2% increase year to year this time last year to the number of people who have taken that exam.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to see something different in the exam stats? What do you see?
I think this is helpful because it shows, to me, it shows the increase, as you mentioned. It shows that there's a decrease in the fail rate, which I think is,
Yep.
it's good news, but it's good information for us to have overall. And that the pass rate improved overall.
I think we all have an interest in seeing those numbers, and especially with the outreach that's going on. I'm just curious to kind of follow those numbers and see if that continues to improve with the outreach. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else by the members?
I just had a quick question for clarification on the national statistics for the jurisprudence examination. That I imagine that's across all examinations.
It is, and that's a bit of a kind of an ambiguous statistic
Yeah.
because not all jurisdictions have a jurisprudence
Right.
exam. So you guys kind of have to keep that in mind in context when we're looking at that number. And that number is something that we collect from FSBPT directly.
So,
I'm sorry. So the type of exam can vary greatly
Yeah,
depending on
absolutely.
the state. So
Yeah, that was my. Sorry, out of curiosity, that was my question, was how do we compare to a particular state or groups of states?
In some ways, it is kind of apples to oranges comparison, where we have a very, and some states do have a very similar to ours, psychometrically sound in a secure testing facility, very similar to the MPTE, and then some open book online based off of their website, those kind of things. So.
Any public comment on applications or licensing? Okay. And agenda item 25, continuing competency.
So for continuing competency, we do have the report for quarter 3 because we are 1 quarter behind in with continuing competency because of when we audit and things like that. So we didn't have a total for this meeting. I don't know if you've seen the trend. We tend to have some, lack of a better word, stragglers when we do our audits. So we don't have a complete total, but we will have that information for you for the next meeting. Everything's running pretty consistent. I don't really have another update on that. Right now, I did get the feedback yesterday about information about the types of courses to see, what courses the licensees are taking and, and submitting the information. So we'll have that prepared for you at an upcoming meeting. If there's anything else like that you'd like to see, let me know.
Or sources of their CE credit.
Yes.
So, right, was it traditional,
Alternate pathway.
was it traditional or alternate pathway?
Okay.
Right.
How difficult would that be for staff to track? Would that be daunting?
Possibly.
Yes.
But it's not something that's impossible.
Okay.
So that's what we'll have to look and see what we can
But-
collect.
Be
I
interesting.
mean, these are audits that are being done, though,
Right.
the random audits. So having, the licensee has to submit the proof of what they did.
The difference between traditional alternate pathway, I think, is going to be a little bit easier for us to count because the analysts are going to know in their evaluation. It's very rare for a licensee to submit something that's on the alternate pathway schedule, other than maybe that statement
attending a
stands.
meeting or
Attending a meeting
yeah.
or attending CPTA or something like that. And even those that are doing that don't always know that they can, submit that on behalf of their audit. But the other statistic that I think that we're going to attempt to try to collect is the difference between the online courses versus the in-person too. And that one I think is going to be a little daunting to try to collect. When we're looking at recognized approval agencies and auditing them for their processes and their procedures and creating kind of a library of content, that will be beneficial for that count, is trying to determine ahead of time in their application process, what content do you provide, and keeping a current catalog of that. And so I think while we'll attempt to do it by the next meeting or two, once we get a better grasp on the recognized approval agencies, we'll have that data more readily available.
When you do an audit and a licensee gives you their certificates and you find a course that wasn't an approved course or by an approved vendor, what's the choice? What happens?
So often the licensee is contacted and asked for, do you have further information that you can provide? And if that's not the case, then we give them the options of having retroactive approval, to look for an approval agency to get that information so they can make it official. And then if that's not the case, then there's some remediation that would occur to get, to go from there, basically.
We'll look at them on a case-by-case
I was
basis too,
wondering,
to just
yeah.
kind of determine if they've met the intent of the statute, because we don't want to discourage them from taking really valuable content just
Right.
because that particular provider hasn't also applied for recognition in California. And so, we'll look at it to determine if it's substantially compliant, and we'll give them credit for that.
Good to know. Thank you. Any other board comment on continuing competency? Questions or any public comment? All right, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 26, Consumer Protection Services.
Morning.
Good morning.
So with the enforcement program, for fiscal year 18-19, we've remained pretty consistent throughout the year. I don't see any concerns or major increases or decreases in our goals or measurements. One thing we do find a concern of, and it's kind of funny that Jason mentioned it yesterday to the students, were the anonymous complaints. And I had Vincent run a quick report for me this morning, just a real quick one to get some kind of a number. And he came up with 50 anonymous complaints
And what amount of time?
for the year, for fiscal year 18-19. And the problem with those complaints is because of the lack of the information that we receive, sometimes it's just, we just can't do anything with them. Not saying that we close the complaints that are received anonymous, because we don't do that. Staff can get pretty creative in obtaining information, gathering information, so that we can proceed with those complaints and to be able to send it to Division of Investigation for a more thorough investigation. They also have their levels and requirements in order for us to submit complaints to them for a formal investigation. So we can't just send an anonymous complaint to DOI, no matter how egregious it may sound. We have to have sufficient information for them to take it on. But like I said, staff is pretty creative. So because of that, I have also been working with Vincent on our complaint form online. And that's one area that has gone down, is the number of complaints received. And we kind of brainstormed, Jason had his brainstorm, is it something we're doing wrong? What can we do differently? Why is it? And so one of the things that I've been working with Vincent is updating our online complaint form. The complaint form can be overwhelming, it could be complex. There's just so much to it. So we've been trying to clean it up. And there's certain areas on the complaint form that's DCA global, so we can't do anything to it. But in the areas that we can change the questions, we've included like radio buttons. So for instance, if it asks, are there any witnesses? Right now, you have like 4 different sections that you can put the name, the address, the email, whatever information you may have or not have. And so then you have to scroll through all of that. So right now with the radio button, if you answer, there are no witnesses, it just takes you on down to the next one. So we're hoping that that will make it easier for the complainant and give us more information. I don't know why they're so vague. It's funny how the complaints that come in on a complaint form or in writing, sometimes they give us a binder. And maybe that's why. Online, it's not, they don't feel there's enough area for them to put the information. I don't know. But we are trying to work with that and see if maybe that'll help in getting those less anonymous complaints. Another area that we've been working with is our business rules within the Breeze records, the complaint records. And this is more for efficiency. It's not so much to speed the complaint process up, but it's more for report purposes. What these business rules will allow is for an alert to go out to the analyst if they have not entered information properly or the information that's required on the Breeze record, the complaint case. So this will be really, really nice to have these alerts that will tell them you need to go back, put in the violation codes, put in these other activity codes that are missing or whatever it may be. So that'll be nice. That should be coming up hopefully soon as well.
Nice. When you look at all of the complaints that we receive, can you say that there is one group that we receive complaints from most often?
Most often?
Like whether it's consumers, anonymous, employers, or licensees themselves?
We do receive. I can't say one is more than the other. It just seems like an overall. But we do receive them from employers. We do receive them from staff.
Staff who work at
consumers.
the facilities?
Reporting on another employee or staff.
How about licensees?
By licensees as well, they're reporting other members, licensees.
PTs, submitting complaints regarding other PTs or other PTAs, other licensed individuals, chiropractors submitting complaints about physical therapy. I mean, so there's a
Wide range.
wide range just
Yeah.
because of the environments that they find themselves working in, the interactions that they have.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, as staff has more opportunity to do outreach to licensee groups, large licensee groups, like making sure that that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've, to the extent that we've had those opportunities so far, that is one of the things that we highlight is, help us, help the profession. If you see something, say something. And in saying something, if you're going to remain anonymous, please provide, as much detail in the complaint as possible. Those complaints, those 50 that we received that were anonymous, it's not so much, it's correct to say that they're unactionable, but some of them are even uninvestigatable, right? There's not enough detail to even head in a direction. But to Elsa's comment that staff is very creative in kind of exploring those and really conducting a desk investigation with what they have in that very basic anonymous complaint, and just seeing if there's something that you can kind of fetter out that's enough, substantial enough to send on to D of I and actually pursue it. So.
But I suppose there are some frustrating cases where there could be a legitimate,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
severe,
yeah. And it is frustrating
Case.
because we know there could be something there, but our hands are tied.
yeah.
Can't go any further with it.
Any other board discussion or comment?
I have a confession. I've never actually went online and looked at the form that people use to file a complaint.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm on it right now, and it's very comprehensive.
cumbersome, yes,
Yeah.
it is.
So the form that you're looking at right now, is it a PDF on the board's website, or is
No, I'm
it
looking
in
at
the Breeze portal?
I'm
Okay.
looking at the
excellent.
Breeze portal.
We still have the complaint form, the paper complaint PDF, that they can also download, but we're trying to steer them to the Breeze
I can see
complaint.
why, yeah, because it sort of forces them
Yes.
to provide a little bit more
Yeah.
information before you can proceed.
But
or-
that's why we conducted that kind of brainstorming session, was because Breeze really isn't a shift from, it's an addition to, right? So the original online complaint's still there. We still take complaints via fax or over the phone, an analyst taking it directly from a consumer or licensee. We still have those avenues to file a complaint. We've just added an additional tool. So trying to determine how that somehow has resulted in a reduction, it's bewildering. So.
That would be an interesting statistic, the vehicles in which we receive complaints, sort of a comparison to see if
Sure.
Breeze is increasing over time or,
And just in general, the number of complaints received has decreased quite a bit. Hopefully, it's a positive thing. I don't know.
Even the
The
metrics
unknown.
of the uninvestigatable ones would be interesting too. Because that could be like a teachable moment in a newsletter or something like that. What we need to know before we can proceed on our end with an investigation,
I like that idea.
We've contemplated content for presentation to licensees and even applicants in school programs, the what not tos. Don't submit a complaint that looks like this, and giving them, redactions of any kind of but just changing the names to protect the innocent kind of situation, just to show them this is the kind of complaint that we receive, that there's really nothing that can be done with it.
All right, that's all the confessions I have for today.
Any other board comment or discussion? And any public comment on enforcement? Thank you, Elsa. And probation monitoring services, agenda item 27.
I'll report real quick for Monty. He's not here. He's been busy. And also, again, his averages have remained pretty much the same. He has been traveling a lot more, so he is trying to interview and have those meetings with each individual, each probationer, at least once a year. So he has been traveling a lot more. And he's busy.
Yeah. Any specific questions regarding probation monitoring? or about anything in the report or the numbers? Okay, any public comment on probation monitoring? Okay, thank you, Elsa. Agenda item number 28 is board member elections. We are currently without a vice president and need one for the remainder of the year. And so I'll take nominations.
Just to clarify, this will last until our December meeting, and we'll have elections again.
Correct.
For the 2020 year.
I nominate Jesus Dominguez.
I second.
Could I nominate someone?
Do you accept the nomination?
As Ms. Ellaby said, till December? Yeah. So I have a window, so I will accept it, but I will, if I'm allowed to nominate.
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Dr. Drummer.
Second.
And Dr. Drummer, do you accept the nomination?
Considering the things that are going to be happening in the next month to month and a half, I will decline this nomination.
Okay, thank you, sir. And any further nominations?
I would nominate Ms. Ellaby because I believe she served in this as vice president in the past, and it would be an easy transition for the next 3 months,
And I would second that.
pending her availability.
I accept the nomination, thank you.
Any further nominations? Okay, we have a vote to take, actually, it would be 2 votes. Okay, and so the first vote would be to vote for Dr. Dominguez for vice president for the remainder of this year. And we'll take a roll call vote.
If the board will allow, would you rather a yay, no vote per motion or a selection of either of the 2 candidates?
I think a yay, no vote per candidate, if I may. Any objections to that?
Nay.
From just a parliamentary standpoint, I think an election would be probably more appropriate just to have a vote for Dr. Dominguez or a vote for Ms. Ellaby, rather than voting yes, no on each one and then comparing the vote count at the end.
I guess my concern is that we're going to end up with a draw between the 2, the way that
Gotcha.
historically we've voted in the past.
Oh, because for the motions, you could vote twice versus for the
Right.
candidate.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha.
So, right, if I think both of you are viable, viable vice presidential people, then I could vote yes for both of you if we use the first method. So rather than doing a preferential type voting procedure, if we just did a straight vote.
Okay.
And then make a motion at the end? or
No,
that
we
is
would
the
just-
vote? Okay.
Elect.
Who do you vote for? And then whoever has the most votes at the end.
Thank you to the.
And everybody votes once?
Thank you to the parliamentarian.
Everybody would vote once, and since there are 5 of us, we should only have 1 winner.
Somebody's going to abstain.
As opposed to the potential of a
Now
preferential,
that you said it,
as opposed to the potential of a preferential voting system where both of you could end up with 5 votes.
Okay.
And then we would have to somehow vote again.
I think you're a mathematician in a past life.
So Brooke, I'll still ask that you capture the votes if you don't mind. Okay, so do you want to call for them?
Okay, so first one, Alicia Rubin, amen.
So we're going to
Pick a name.
pick a name.
So, and-
Dr. Dominguez.
Jesus Dominguez.
Unorthodox as it might be, Ms. Ellaby.
Daniel Drummer.
I vote for Ms. Ellaby.
Katerina Ellaby.
I vote for Dr. Dominguez.
Tanya McMillian.
I vote for Ms. Ellerby.
Okay.
Okay, motion carries for Ms. Ellaby as Vice President, 3-2.
For 3 months and 12 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. And now we are at agenda item number 29, which is public comment on items not on the agenda. We'd like to invite any members of the public to come up and introduce yourself and bring up any items that haven't been mentioned on the agenda that you'd like to just bring to our attention. Or any questions or comments or anything that you might be curious about. It's a good time if anyone wants to come up.
Just had a quick comment, and I just wanted to express our appreciation for the board coming and being here for the past 2 days, and it's been educational for myself and the students, and we just really appreciate the time and effort you guys put in.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Rebecca, anything that you wanted to bring up?
I think California is in good hands.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Okay, so agenda items for future meetings.
Yes, we captured the pocket license to be revisited at the next meeting.
We had a lot of things to say at the last meeting.
Could I ask that we consider a presentation from our council? Not so much about the mechanics of adjudication, but maybe the roles of the ALJ and legal counsel?
We actually have that slated for the
Yes,
December meeting.
I saw that, yeah.
Yep.
That's a good suggestion. If I may, I'm just scrolling through our last minute meetings just to see.
Absolutely. There are some things that we still have in the parking lot that, as resources allow, we'll be proposing for President's approval for the next agenda. So some of those things we're very well aware of.
Okay. Yes. Any other ideas from board members for future items on the agenda? Any public comment on future items? I think we're doing okay. So, okay. Our next meeting will be held at DCA Hearing Room at the Evergreen Street address, 2005 in Sacramento, on December 12th and 13th. And so the time is 11:34 and we're going to adjourn. Thank you.